All right, welcome everyone. We're here for another installment of our thought leadership series on democratization of AI and making AI available to everyone across organizations of all sizes. Today we have John Burke, Chairman and CEO of UBIX AI, and Clive Pearson, CEO of Qualex Consulting. I'm Jack Boree, the CMO at UBIX here, and let's go ahead and get started. Let's get started with some quick introductions for Clive. Do you mind kicking us off with a little background on yourself and Qualex?
Certainly. So I'm Clive Pearson, the CEO and co-founder of Qualex Consulting Services, founded in 1995. My background was at SAS Consulting at the time, and I'd worked there for several years and started Qualex basically to focus on on-site consulting for SAS at the time. So since then, we've implemented solutions for SaaS across the spectrum of industries from healthcare to banking, government, and developed IP in various industries around patron value optimization and casinos and sports teams as well. So that's kind of a high level explanation of my background at Qualex. So
Nice. And John, before we dive into questions, do you mind doing the same? Give a quick introduction.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Clive. So, John Burke, Chairman and CEO of UBIX, and I started my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, did mergers and acquisition advisory, corporate turnaround, bankruptcy restructuring, and fraud investigations. And so, did enough audit hours to get my CPA, but that was not the destiny for me. And then I jumped out in the late '90s when the dot coms were really percolating, and jumped into an early startup called Website Story, which pioneered SaaS-based web analytics. I ran finance operations and IT for that organization. And we took it public many years later, merged with Omniture, and then sold to Adobe. And so, what Adobe Analytics is what Website Story and Omniture built in the late '90s and early 2000s. Then the 2008 timeframe was kicking off. And so, it was a financial crisis. I started a turnaround firm called Boss Corporation, did 7 turnarounds in 7 years and 12 acquisitions during that time. And then I started Osprey Data with my business partner, Miles Mahoney, who is also my business partner here at UBIX. And so it was a predictive analytics and industrial control company in the oil and gas that was sold to a field services company. And Miles and I started UBIX to bring democratization and AI to everyone. Now it's been a 7-year journey. We have our great partner here, Clive at Qualex, and so we're really together, really conquering this world of AI.
Well, and that's a great segue, John. We've been talking a lot recently about the democratization of AI. Mentioned that. Do you mind diving into what that means to you and to UBIX here?
Yeah, we have a strong bias around democratization. So in our view, that's our entire business, right? So democratization is really to bring a capability to everyone, right? And so UBIX stands for ubiquitous, right? So we're the for everyone company, right? So businesses of all sizes that can work with UBIX and across all different industries. But the democratization means something different to, my former roles, which I refer to as knowledge centers, like the center of the CFO's office or chief technology officer, chief marketing officer. Those are kind of knowledge centers within a company. And democratization is about empowering those knowledge centers, right? So if you look at that from a standpoint of a CFO's office is trying to understand forecasting, planning, et cetera, right now they have to rely on either doing things manually or relying on technical teams to take that subject matter expertise and build it, right? And so it's about empowering those organizations and people of subject matter expertise to go and innovate with those things, right? And we innovate with our partners at Qualex on subject matter expertise in a variety of different areas. But UBIX allows you to do so rapidly and bring these capabilities to all personas, not just technical teams. And the big shift there, which UBIX is driving, is to empower everyone, right? And that's what AI is all about. AI is not about empowering your data scientists. It's not about empowering your infrastructure, right? It is about empowering everyone. You don't need to know everything to use AI, right? And that's what UBIX is all about. And so that's what democratization means to us.
It's a very exciting time. Clive, I'm curious for your take on it.
well, I would ditto what John said. Actually, it's kind of funny because UBIX as a name is the ubiquity side of it. Okay, and that's really what democratizing AI is all about, for at least from our perspective, right? And I think if we look at it from a business or a personal perspective, our background is very technical, right? And I think that's really when you see technology just evolving and enabling people. Now you're basically making those technical capabilities that would require potentially programmers historically now to just be enabled for everybody in one context, right? So I think that's really the value of it from the perspective of democratizing it for everybody is really enabling everybody to use it, right? And that's really using technology to that level. We've seen it through evolution of programs becoming easier and easier to program. And now we're seeing it where we're trying to remove the programs from it so you don't have to program to use it. And it's exciting times. I always tell people we cannot get bored in this industry because it evolves so quickly. And it's certainly true in this case. But I think it's kind of ironic how UBIX kind of leverages that from a context of democratizing it for everybody. So from AI UBIX perspective.
Yeah, and also, Clive, like with from the technical teams, because you guys work with us to solve really complex, bespoke problems and for clients. But there's a whole bunch of things around democratization where technical teams are empowering the knowledge centers around all the backlog stuff that they really don't have the time to deal with. So you can also look at from a technical team perspective is that you're using democratization of AI to empower users to solve their own problems, while you as a technical team are focusing on that core very complex problem solving that usually gets in the way of being able to solve all of the laundry list of requests that come in from the knowledge centers.
Well, and the technical perspective gets more challenging too. So let's not mitigate that need too, right? It's enabling the technical people to be more productive in their use of time. So we look at it as taking the urgency out of a problem and just removing it because we're able to do that and focus on the important things. Because just because it's urgent and there's a dire need to get it done doesn't mean it's important from a business, perspective in one sense. But it is an immediate need because operationally you got to have that urgency fixed. But the time to fix it is expedited because of enabling AI in that effort. So it's kind of ironic in one way because it does let you focus on things that are ultimately more business driven and less operational because you're able to kind of resolve those issues faster too. But yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Well, and something we've talked a lot about recently has been limitations of legacy systems in this adoption and evolution of AI. That part of it is people, part of it is process, part of it is system. How, and let's start off with Clive for this one. How is Qualex embarking on dealing with legacy systems and the deployment of AI as we democratize these new solutions across a broader audience?
I guess from the legacy perspective, the key there is understanding the legacy perspective and how it's deployed throughout the organization. Without a true understanding of that, you're going to miss things on that move, on that migration process. So for us, it's really, how do you take kind of the low hanging fruit to kind of move things forward that way? Because without that, you can actually find yourselves in a migration process where we're moving to this new kind of frontier, one perspective, but the legacy systems are so entrenched that you really need a full understanding of that impact of moving it. And then when you move it, if you're really orchestrating that correctly, you're actually going to kind of make a leap forward beyond what you ever thought you could do, right? Because you're going to be able to skip a couple of moves here, right? For example, companies who, let's say, haven't embraced the cloud, haven't moved there yet, they can actually take that step to get all the way there in that move. But the legacy systems themselves are often very complex, not because they needed to be, but because they had to be back then, right? We're able to kind of catapult that to make everything more productive and more streamlined in that process. But it really does begin with a true cataloging of everything out there to really understand that move. And then with the right plan in place that enables you to pick the things that are going to be most productive and set that framework up for that move, and that's really where you can actually see a huge delta in what you're getting now on the legacy side with what you're going to get enabled in the future with that move. But I think the step is incremental. So don't think it's you're going to rip the Band-Aid off and be there, because it's not. It's going to be an incremental move. It's going to require replatforming. It's going to require a whole infrastructure change in architecture that might even require new people, new skill sets that you don't even have. But you need the right plan to execute it. And it is not in some of these larger organizations that have been taking these steps. It's not like AI happened yesterday. It's been a move and a progression over time here. So people have been making these steps. Some of these steps from a legacy perspective have been, I don't know, I've seen 10 or 5 to 10 years in the making or in that plan. Now, Can it happen faster? Probably, but it really does require the right team to kind of make that move happen and with the right plan in place, you know. But I think you need to have your target set. You need to know that's where you want to be, and you need to know that's where you want to go to, and then you can enable it. But if you don't take advantage of truly understanding how everything is being done right now, that migration is going to fail. It's going to fail. You're going to leave somebody out, and that's going to potentially really hurt your organization. So the first thing is understand exactly how your business has engaged with the IP that it has, and then look at what you can do in the migration plan. And that's an effort in itself just to get that right plan in place. But certainly everyone is moving there, and we're excited to be part of it. And everything that we're doing from an IP perspective that we've been developing over the last 20, 25 years is engaging in that process, right? So we're embarking on it from our own IT stack and have been for years. But I think it's recognizing what you have is the key to recognizing that plan and putting the right plan in place.
And I also agree with that, right? So and from a standpoint of if I cast the net a little bit wider on some legacy systems, UBIX always says that we meet you where you are, right? Because we want to bring this capability to you right now, right? So whether you're on an on-prem ERP system or you're using SAS, statistical software for ETL and descriptive analytics, et cetera, those are all things that we view as kind of like legacy systems. You may also have your cloud that you've got the data store, et cetera. So we can work and connect into all of that and allow you to start innovating with these great capabilities and democratizing AI, right? And so you can bring this to your organization now. And so some aspects, like where you see that, we're partners with a lot of the ERP firms, et cetera, and they've been trying to make a big shift for their clients to come from on-prem to the cloud, right? And a lot of people have been hesitant, right? Because exactly what Clive said is that there's a lot that goes into that, but there's also a lot of legacy customizations that people rely upon and don't want to let go, right? So you can have a hybrid world, right? You can work with UBIX in the cloud that's talking to your SAP system on-prem, that's also talking to your data store, your other data store in the cloud, or your CRM system that's in the cloud. So you can bring AI as an overlay to all of your infrastructure, right? And through that, you get to innovation faster, you get to ROI faster, and then that will actually justify the migration and other things like that. Because exactly what Clive said, migrations are complex, but they are worth it, right? Like you basically go through this process and you do it because it is worth it.
And by the way, success breeds success, right? So in that context of taking the plan, executing on kind of your low-hanging fruit objectively, proving that successful, making sure it's architected for scalability in the future, which is the key as well in those implementations. But totally agree with that, John. 100%.
So a lot of this goes back to something we've talked about a lot recently around the differentiation between artificial intelligence and infrastructure. And what we're talking about legacy systems, whether they be truly legacy and on-premise or in the cloud, modernizing that infrastructure can sometimes be a confusing challenge for businesses to make that distinction between AI and infrastructure. John, do you mind maybe elaborating a little bit?
Don't get me wrong, we're partners with the cloud providers, right? So, and we run on the cloud providers. But we're an intelligent cloud, so we run on and orchestrate the infrastructure for you on demand. The big shift that's happened really over the last number of years is that the cloud providers have made it easier for you to build your own stuff, right? But if someone's talking about, empowering you with your cloud and empowering you with like your data scientists being able to talk to it with their Jupyter notebooks and stuff like that, they're all in the infrastructure game. They're not in AI, right? The AI game is, like I said before, is for everyone, right? AI should be a way where you can actually interact with it and solve problems without relying on having to build everything, right? And if I keep coming back to this ERP example, but being a former CFO and CPA, no one thought they were going to go build their own ERP systems, right? They either bought SAP, Oracle, Dynamics, Sage, et cetera, right? Because they were a turnkey situation that allowed you to get up and running using their expertise and their capability. The problem that with the AI aspect around infrastructure is that people have been sold that they have to build all this, right? And they've been sold that by the hyperscalers and everything like that to basically use consumption and consume these resources even while building, right? And so UBIX is a turnkey environment that allows you to get up and running with your intelligent cloud very quickly and immediately start connecting and integrating with your infrastructure, like the meet you where you are capability, right? And then start solving problems, right? So it's about getting up and running and focusing 100% of your time on problem solving and 0% of your time on infrastructure. And if you look at kind of what people have spent, we've come into failed infrastructure build outs where they've spent 10, 20, $30 million on a build out, or even 500,000 or a million. And they really just got a cloud presence with some data connected into that cloud environment, right? That's a failure in every step of the way, right? And they spent a lot of money on it, right? So we really encourage all of you to basically go and be in the business of AI, which is focused on problem solving, not in the business of infrastructure building, right? Because once you've built it, you have to maintain it, and you have to maintain it every day, every month, every year for an equal amount of cost, right? And so I understand why the cloud providers are saying you have to build it because then you're locked in, but you don't, right? AI should be accessible to everyone, and it should be turnkey, and you should work with people like Clive and Qualex on focusing on solving these amazing problems, because the infrastructure is not what drives the ROI. It's the problem solving, and it's what runs on that infrastructure, right? And so between the two of our companies, you can get up and running very quickly and start solving problems today.
Yeah, so that's punted to me now. Is that my rebuttal on that? But no, I think, look, I totally agree. I think there's two different things here, right? Infrastructure on the AI side is, like we're saying, do you want to spend that time and effort in making sure you have the right servers configured, making sure you all of that infrastructure, totally different team. Like the AI team. So I think I look at it the three ways. I look at it as the infrastructure, which is without that, you don't have it, which, by the way, due to evolutions in the last 3 or 4 years, we actually have the infrastructure that actually supports what AI is delivering. Before then, it wasn't here. And go back to 1950, it sure as hell wasn't here. But the scientists had already figured it out. They had it done, but they couldn't execute it because they didn't have the volume of data, the processing power, all of that infrastructure there, right? Now we have it. And now we're talking about how to leverage it. To leverage it, don't mitigate the fact the infrastructure has to be there, because without it, we don't have it. But then say, now we have AI. Let the data scientists go to work. Let the application builders go to work. Let that side of it sit there and enable your business, folks, right? So UBIX is a platform. It's a platform. You don't have to think about the infrastructure side of it. It's already there for you, right? You might have data scientists. You don't need a team of them like you might have before. UBIX is going to enable them, so you need fewer of them. Now you get to focus on the benefit on the user side of it, right? The business side of it. If you look at the power of AI, when we look at it, I don't know where it's going to be 5 years from now, but I really think the infrastructure, which without we wouldn't have, right? We have to have that to support it, number one, and we have it. Perfect. Number two, the data scientists are writing all these fancy models. Some of those models will be running for years. They'll be tweaked over time, but the need to support and maintain a model in production is a lot less than it is to write it to begin with. So let's leverage that into context. Now, the business people are going to be the ones who really benefit out of that, because they are going to create new business objectives or needs that they wouldn't have thought of. Even the thought of it would have been non-existent 5-10 years ago. But now, because we're enabled with everything, with the infrastructure and the AI platforms and the data scientists that are creating these things, you now are going to see this exponential value on the business side of it. And I think that's the exciting part for us to be in right now, is get everybody in there, leverage, use, and create things we don't even think of today for the future.
Some of the greatest advances have been in the ability to scale and the amount of compute we can do now and how it bursts, right? And it also talks to cloud efficiencies, right? It's a different paradigm shift than what we were doing with fixed resources on-prem, right? You engineer things to be dynamic. And so it actually provisions the resources intelligently and on demand and scales them up. And then once you're done training, it puts it away. Yeah, it predicts what you're going to need, right? So it's intelligent, and so it's also cost effectively using, because you can spin up to use a bunch of resources, and after 5-10 minutes, you've trained a bunch of different models, and now you scale it back down. So you've used it very efficiently versus the old school way. We had to over engineer for our peaks, right? We were thinking in peaks and valleys, right? And so it just allows you just an amazing capability, and so huge fan of the advances in the basically the infrastructure, right? And so I agree with everything.
which enable it, right? Without that, you wouldn't be able to do it. We've got client examples where we've got, I don't know, sometimes it's 6 weeks of a process that would run, and now it's running in seconds, right? Because of scalability and burst. And the cost is the same. It just happened, instead of taking 6 weeks, you did it in minutes or seconds, right? So it's still costing you the same, but now you're so much more productive with the results that you got. You can actually make informed decisions real time in that concept around it. So definitely infrastructure, though. It goes back to the whole thing. Without that infrastructure ability, we wouldn't be sitting here even having this discussion around it.
Point to like bring it all home is that, but you don't want to build it, right? Like unless you're an expert, like there was a million decisions that we made along the way,
Don't even try. That would be
right? And so if your team are not a very large budget and you're and filled with experts in cloud engineering, you don't want to do it. You're gonna fail.
and you're going to go through a big learning, exercise that's not needed, basically.
And it's not failing fast; it's failing slow, which is the most painful.
And you may never get there either, right? You may
Yeah.
never get there. Your end goal might never be achieved.
100%.
Well, so another one of those achievable goals that a lot of organizations are trying to run towards but may not understand correctly is the role of generative AI now in business or for enterprise. Most of us have played with the Chat GPT. We've enjoyed the novelty, but I think the discussion broadens when it comes to driving real enterprise value. John, you want to kick us off the discussion there?
We love the generative AI movement, right? And what they've been really going with like ChatGPT and Gemini and everything like that. And I have a lot of respect for the discovery process that they're in, right? And they've been trying to do something different than most businesses are trying to do. They've been trying to define the world of information, right? And really being that competing against the strong power play that Google's had on search, right? And so that's really what they've been attacking. And so it's a completely different challenge than what you experience as a business. And so we define generative AI for business differently, right? Our focus we call it Chat UBIX, right? So we kind of, it used to be called, Auto Curious, right? But now we call it, Chat UBIX because it's just a little bit better name with Chat GPT, et cetera. And that focus really is about allowing you to have conversational analytics. So a big aspect of Chat UBIX is any system that's connected into UBIX, you can actually talk to it and just ask it, like, what are my, slowest moving products? What are my top moving products? What are, what is the fastest moving product with the greatest forecast demand, right? You can ask it questions around mapping, around the globe of where your customer demand is, right? Any conversation, any thought that you come up with, you can conversate with that underlying data, and it'll understand the intent and what system that it needs to go and query that data from, right? And so it just allows you to have this conversational capability on top of your enterprise data, right? Which is much more helpful than asking about what's the gestation period of an elephant or something like that, right? And so in business, we don't really have elephant problems, right? And so in business, we focus on really how we run ourselves better. And so UBIX also took it a step forward, right, with our generative complex problem solving, right? So since in model space allows you to solve and innovate using all these great capabilities in a no-code fashion, right, in line with that democratization capability, and then you can then go and publish what you've learned, the system around the subject matter expertise, et cetera, on top of a data set that's known, let's say your ERP system, your CRM system, your inventory management system, et cetera. And you then go and you can actually, have it just learn how to solve that problem, the anatomy of the problem solving. And then now your large language model has learned how to solve a complex problem. So if a customer has that ERP system, that CRM system, you can just ask Chat UBIX, what can you solve for me? And it'll tell you I can solve these 15 or 20 different things on top of the data that you have connected to me. Would you like me to do that? And it'll actually go and autonomously solve that problem, right? And so, and so that is an amazing capability, right? That allows you to generate and solve complex problems where you're leveraging the subject matter expertise of others on top of that data. So it understands the context of the data, it understands the structure of the problem and how to work through it to give an outcome for you as the business. And so that we see the promise of AI to be that, right? Is that you can come in and quickly solve problems leveraging these great capabilities, and you don't need to hand it off to a large team of data scientists and network engineers and cloud engineers to go and bring this thing to life, right? So it's just, we built it to be a very helpful product, and generative AI is amazing. But a lot of the ChatGPTs and the Geminis of the world are really helping you with more tactical things like task-based stuff. Write me this, I want this information, or can you summarize this? All very powerful capabilities, but those are not really the problems that us as executives contend with every day, right? So UBIX and Qualex has played a big role in helping us build out different subject matter expertise and teaching it more and more things. And so between us as partners, that library of understanding will continue to evolve over time. But it's an amazing capability now.
I think this is a great segue, Clive. Over the last couple of years together, we have discussed some very interesting high-value use cases around casinos, sports, and entertainment. Maybe I can throw this to you to start to illustrate some actual real-world use cases where we're applying these solutions.
From the, at least when we look at casinos and sports teams, which is, two areas where we have a lot of IP that we've deployed across many casinos and many sports teams around the world. But, if you look at AI and how that enables it, when you look at the business of that, the business context with which they're using what we've deployed in relation to sports teams and casinos, it plays into what we've built, which is tied to the players and the patrons and the fans. So we're really tied to the marketing arm. And when you look at generative AI, we're doing the analysis around patrons so that we can target them for marketing, right? The AI world is letting us target the custom on the context of the marketing, but also the algorithms that we're building for the AI components that are driving it. Now, the beauty about our offering in regards to the AI component is it's very, in one sense, structured. So we actually have a lot of control over that from the input side. And I think if you look at AI and you look at that world about where the risk sits in the interpretation of what we have. So the fact that IQ Sports and IQ Gaming are very strict in nature of what we've built, the interpretation of it is going to be conforming to something. It's not going to be a hallucination in one context, right? Which everyone refers to right now. The other side is enabling the business side. If you think about some of these large casinos and sports teams that are dealing with all the marketing collateral that they're putting together to customize those offers for the individuals, those are also fitting into a sweet spot for generative AI, right? So when we looked at it from a context of where the value is, whether we're reading in video footage of a game and trying to find out how many eyeballs from the TV broadcast were enabling, say, Heineken or some other sponsor to be on the screen, there's a value on that side from a marketing dollar revenue side. It can be after the fact. It can be based on the true amount of time you actually had real-time eyeballs looking at it from a global footprint of media broadcast, right? There's that one narrow little spectrum of it. But the other side operationally for us is really tied more to building it, getting that information of all the touch points of a patron and a fan into the database and being able to react to it in a real-time nature and let AI from that context drive that custom marketing for that individual. That will be one thing. But I do think there is a limitation for us in AI as we roll it out to recognize that we have to be careful of what we're doing in that context. And by putting it together, we have a lot more control over it than just throwing something into the abyss and hoping we get the right result back, right? So I think from our side, when we look at it from a Qualex perspective, the IP that we're developing is trying to do that, is trying to give another level of confidence in what we're pushing out on the AI world. So With that, I'll let John kind of explain on the UBIX side how that's going to be transformative. But the reality for Qualex is that's the starting point. The starting point is evolving our IP into those platforms, and UBIX being one for us with IQ Gaming and IQ Sports that facilitates that usage from the business side.
Plus, those use cases are really cool, right? Gaming, sports, but very focused on the customer, right, and marketing focus and customer intelligence. It's not too different than other use cases, right? Everyone's trying to understand their customer better. And what since my background, there's a lot in web analytics, right? That digital marketing aspect, and so a lot of use cases in the marketing side where AI benefits significantly. And the beautiful thing about what you mentioned there, real time nature, like we were really we were streaming and doing real time reporting on analytics of what's going on a website. But we had no ability back in the day of Website Story and Omniture and then even Adobe Analytics of being able to predict and understand and run science at scale in real time, right? Now we can actually run complex models that conclude in the millisecond level to understand dynamic audiencing for the customer that's on the web page, doing use cases around media mix modeling and other cool things that are more higher level analytics and return on ad spend, et cetera. But that ability to interact in session, right? So use cases of taking a prediction or a score, right? Whether it's bot detection or fraud detection, and be able to score that as a bot, score that as fraud, and actually allow your forms on your webpage to block anything with that scoring, right? So you actually remove things from getting into the system and causing problems, right? Form submissions and other things like that, insertion to text, and all those things go away because you're just blocking and filtering out using science. Same way that you can also dynamically serve up content, right? So it's really evolving to where you actually have, rather than just descriptive analytics that you actually review and say, oh, yesterday looked really good, right? But all of your abandonments you could do nothing about now, right? But now you can actually predict and actually insert yourself to stop that from abandoning or stop them from leaving the cart, right? When you're starting to predict that they have risk of abandonment. So it just allows you to, around the same principles, right? The analytics has been good in that area for a long time, but you now have greater tools that allow you to do your job in different ways, right? So it doesn't remove your job. It gives you cooler tools to think now, okay, well, with this profile, what type of things should I insert to stop them from abandoning the website? What can I do to turn them back on a pathway or a journey that would be more successful, right? And so you're thinking differently, but tools like the IP that Clive was talking about and capabilities like UBIX allow you to do that now, right? Versus before you had no chance, right? You just had to accept your fate.
Yeah, or do it after the fact, right? So now you're able to inject it at real time. And that's one thing that everyone has been talking about for many years, real time, real time. But the fact that you can actually have that model give me a result in real time is a whole other thing, right? In some cases, gaming and sports teams, a bad example in one sense, because I always say the volume of data we deal with is minimal compared to some of the banking data and the census data and other clients that we have, which really enables you. It really does enable you, but it also makes it a lot easier to streamline those processes, to inject those into the carts or the real-time offers that are going on when you see something change, right? And definitely gaming sees it. But if you look at the volume of people playing at a casino at any one time, it's not going to be a million people, right? So it's very different, implementation. But again, it doesn't change the value of that real-time integration of that offer from AI. So definitely extreme opportunity there. But it's going to change the way we think in business anyway, because that's going to be second nature. You're going to be finding other things to value and drive business. So definitely
Elevates the whole game.
And those that innovate will succeed in that effort too. So.
Well, and I think elevating the game is a key point across our entire discussion. I'm sure a big part of our audience, we've talked about kind of what is now, what is the art of the possible in the near distant future, and what we're all seeking to innovate. I think our audience would be curious to get a perspective on where each of you believe your average business should be in the next 5 to 10 years. What are kind of those key points that are going to be part of that norm that aren't now? What can we look forward to?
Okay, so I'll take the lead first. But no, I think, when you look at what's happened right now, right, early adopters already happened, right? Early adoption's there. You're going to see more of this use with AI, with generative AI becoming just much more widespread. When I talk to my kids at school, they're using AI, right, to help with the papers, but they're not doing it to cheat the system. They're doing it because they're being told to do it. So when that class graduates, they're probably going to be more versed in using these tool sets than some of the people that we work with in business who've been there for 10, 20 years already, right? The predictive analytics is just going to continue to blossom. The data scientist world is just going to continue to be one that's going to continue to grow. I think we need to be careful with things like cybersecurity. Continues to be a threat, but to me, I always come back to that. How AI is integrated into the cybersecurity side of it's going to be an important part to help facilitate things for us in the future. But let's recognize most of these attacks are individuals making phone calls to systems and acting like they're somebody else. So that has to be, how do we avoid that? Well, we can. Where's the phone call coming from? Is there a potential threat on this call? Don't answer it, whatever. So all of those things that can help facilitate that are going to continue to be a big threat. I mean, we look at what happened in Vegas when I was there staying at MGM. We had a cyber attack. We had one at Caesars before that. We've had many threats and attacks that continue to see those. We need vigilance there, and AI can help with that for sure. And continued automation across the board. AI is going to automate so many more things that we can't even think about, but it's definitely a big component. But I think the other thing too, which is just a continuation of AI, when we look at personalization and personalizing things, that's going to, it's just going to continue. So it's almost like it's a continued evolution. And I go back to that from the beginning where I was saying, there's nothing really new here except the infrastructure and the data scientists evolving that have gotten us to another level. But infrastructure was key to get us to this level, right? And that's only going to continue. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, John.
Yeah, that's great. So I always love, like, we've been living in the future in both of our businesses, right? We've been kind of solving the problems of the future today, right? And so I love living in that place, right? And so one of the things that I continue to look at is that where you look and see where we've evolved from doing a lot of machine learning, but the generative AI stuff is really cool, right? But it's very much, it's language focused, right? It's a knowledge base that it's interacting with, and a lot of times it's in a static environment, right? And so I think that merger of that kind of static environment to be in a more dynamic environment for the business context, you're also using a layering of techniques, right? So we use a ton of regression and classification and clustering and time series, et cetera, that are amazing techniques that actually empower the knowledge base and the language models and how you interact with it, right? So you can actually do, let's say, a clustering model that actually does customer segmentation and understands the different types of groups of customer population or channel, et cetera. And then you can use that to those different segments to train a product forecast, right? So you're getting much more accurate forecasts because certain customer populations buy in similar ways, right? So you're actually able to understand kind of how you impact and how you can more accurately forecast, right? And then you put in on top of that this amazing capability such as reinforcement learning, right? And reinforcement learning is where you're teaching a robot how to think, right? And so on top of that forecast and on top of that clustering, you now have reinforcement learning that's looking at the gamification of business, which is actually understanding the state of your business and what actions to take to resolve that, right? So you've got something that's thinking for you all the time that says, okay, demand's going much higher and I've got to go and raise some purchase orders. And right now, UBIX will make a recommendation saying, hey, you got to buy these different things. But in the very near future, we're adding automation, right? And so my long-winded answer here is automation is now coming into play, right? Because it brings all this math and great science and statistics and everything like that, combined with deep learning and language models, combined with reinforcement learning, all comes together to be that box of AI that is encapsulated within UBIX. But you're basically doing it to really do something and make conclusions. And that automation piece, everyone talks about the fear of AI and taking over the world and everything like that. but it only has the ability to do things it has control over, right? So in automation and how you govern that, you can select and provide controls around how you can call that automation, right? And the oversight that you can build in to where it makes a recommendation and it has to receive an affirmative approval, right? So there's ways to engineer it to make it very powerful and not dangerous, right? And so I think we're going to see that continuation of what Clive and I do every day, which is around solving complex problems in novel ways using this amazing capability, but also a really big step up in automation. And you hear about agents all the time. We've been building agents for years, right? We called them operators, right? Before. And so agents is a cooler name now, right? So we're changing our topics from operators to agents, which are task-based things that can do something based on what you ask it to do, right? And so you'll see things continue to evolve inside of UBIX, also with Qualex, in this area of merging all these great capabilities and advances in infrastructure, machine learning, deep learning, and of course, automation.
I think it's an exciting time for sure with technology and where we're sitting and looking at what we've done in the past and seeing how we can make things better and keep it moving forward. So.
Well, and I think that we can start to wrap things up here with some words of wisdom to conclude. Given the evolving landscape, maybe we could kick off with John. What are some kind of key strategies, a few takeaways for those looking to embark on these endeavors in the next few years to do so with best practices in mind?
Yeah. So I would say work with partners like Qualex and UBIX, right? Because we can get you there faster, right? That's the commercialization of this whole thing, right? Right. It's we can get you there faster, right? And so I would say that because you get into focusing on the problem solving and not on all the other pitfalls that get in the way of your success, right? And unless you're in the business of AI and analytics, you have no business building it, right? So work with companies that already have a turnkey situation that can get you focusing on delivering to ROI really quickly, right? Because if they can't promise you ROI quickly, they don't know what they're doing, right? And they're not in the business of AI, right? And so that's the thing that's the cautionary tale of what we're trying to prevent people from doing. But from a standpoint of words of wisdom and is really get going, right? This is the coolest stuff out there. This is things that I dreamed of in my early days of analytics and data science and AI. And there's just such amazing capabilities. And it's really fun seeing how it transforms your organization. And it can actually empower and lift up people within your organizations to do more with less, right? And so it is an amazing capability that everyone should be using. And I think the reason we created UBIX, now going on almost 8 years, was to allow you to receive the benefits without all the risk of failure, right? So now you've got trusted partners like Qualex that can solve very bespoke problems. You've got the complex generative problem solving for very routine problems that you're probably not solving now, but can with UBIX. And it just creates a good combination and a real powerful engine to bring things home for you. So what we really care about is your success. And we always say that the future's now, right? Let's get going after it, right? And start advancing your business now.
Yes, from our side, I think the one word I would say is commit, right? I would say commit. Commit to it, number one. But I would also add, I'm not going to be as wordy as John, but I will say a couple more things. I would say commit to it, do your due diligence, right? No, there's no substitute for that. But we can show you the way. So keep us in mind. And to John's point, you're better served by going to a platform type solution and migrate. And I'll tell you, just historically, we've seen it time and time again. People continue to try to do and develop their own things, homegrown products, homegrown solutions. And over time, they end up getting replaced. So if you're going to do it more as a proof of concept to prove that that's the right way to go. But if you're gonna look at it seriously, commit to it and look for the right platform. And UBIX and Qualex can get you there. So that's it from my side. And it's Friday afternoon. It's 4:37. The tie's coming off. We're on the East Coast. You're on the West. At least John is right. So anyway, with that, thank you guys. Appreciated being on the webinar here today.